You're listening to Ideal Practice, episode number 106. One of the hardest things about being in private practice, y'all, something that nobody talks about, something that can have perhaps some of the biggest impacts on your level of success, your risk for burnout, and your capacity for actually enjoying being a business owner, is the very real danger that you will be working in isolation. So that's what we're going to talk about today, what that looks like as an entrepreneur, why it's a problem, and what you can do about it. So stay tuned. Hi, I'm Wendy Pitts Reeves, and with over 2 decades of experience in the private practice world, I've built my 6-figure business while learning a lot of lessons the hard way. This is the first podcast that shows you how to apply the principles of energy, alignment, and strategy to build a practice that is profit-centered, but people-forward. This is the Ideal Practice Podcast. Hey, folks, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Ideal Practice. This is Wendy Pitts Reeves, your host, and I'm really happy to be hanging out with you again today, as always. How you doing? How's life in your neck of the woods? I hope it's going well. Things have been kind of nutso crazy around here. For a lot of people this time of year, May going into June is a really busy time with all the end of the year school stuff that goes on. I know lots of programs and events happening. I hope you have managed to keep your head above water through all that. We have some events going on here too at Ideal Practice that I'm going to be talking about in a few moments. But I'm really happy about the way things are going. I have to tell you, I've got several things that I'm cooking at one time because that's kind of how I roll. And one of the things that I have started in the last few months that I actually don't talk about much here on the podcast is a peer, basically kind of a peer-led support group for women leaders at midlife. It's called Accomplished. This is on the counseling side of my work, not the coaching side, believe it or not. And that group has been so much fun. Like, I forget how much I enjoy this kind of thing. It is like such a treat to see what happens when people come together and get to know each other, support each other, align with sort of a common vision of wanting something better for themselves and for each other. And that's exactly what's been happening in Accomplished. We've only been meeting for a little while, and already some pretty big stuff is coming out of the group in terms of new initiatives, new ideas, new desires that they are allowing themselves to explore. And Lord, that has been a fun thing to watch, I have to say. Really, really fun. So I want to talk about that kind of idea because that kind of mutual support is exactly what we often are missing in private practice. Now, I don't know about you, but before I started a practice, I had been working in hospitals most of the time, but I'd also done some agency work. That's where a lot of us kind of get our start, right? Working in a local medical hospital, psychiatric hospital, community mental health centers, those kinds of settings. And that's all fine. That's all fine. But I have to say that when you are part of an agency, when you are part of a hospital, you are often part of a team, right? Have any of you ever been part of a treatment team? Depending upon what line of healthcare you're in, you may or may not have had that experience. But back when I worked at a residential treatment center for adolescents, treatment team was the backbone of the work. That was a whole collection of professionals who all came to the table with different areas of expertise, different perspectives, different skill sets that all combined together to understand, to learn to understand, to come to understand what an individual needed and how it could best support that kid, right? And it was always fun to be a part of those teams because everybody really does have a completely different perspective. People think of things that you may not. You also have a different perspective that is helpful to them. Well, when you are in private practice, you are the team. You are the team. And one of the scariest things about starting, managing, growing, and owning a private practice is that you are it, guys. that power to create and to serve and to shine, that is yours. And that is such a lovely part of being in practice. But so is the risk and the responsibility. There's a lot of that that comes along as well. And I'm going to tell you, this is true whether you are in a solo practice or whether you are managing a group practice. In fact, if you're running a group practice, it's even greater. And it's also true even if you have a support team of your own behind the scenes, like a virtual assistant, as we have talked about here on the podcast. No matter what your setup is, if you are the practice owner, whether it's a solo show or a group, whether you have administrative help or not, if you are the practice owner, you're still the CEO. You are the CEO of your own show. And that brings with it not only the joys and freedoms that are a natural part of being able to do things the way you want to do them, which I'm a huge fan of, but it also brings a fair amount of risk and responsibility, such as you're going to have problems with clients from time to time. Back early in my private practice, I was doing a lot of domestic violence work. And I still remember being alone in my office with a client, with a woman, a client of mine, late in the day. It was like a 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock session, something like that. And her husband, who was a dangerous guy, was driving circles around our building outside, just gradually moving his car to different sides of the building, circling the building, watching for her to emerge at the end of our session. And I had to call police to make sure that she could be escorted safely from the building. Now, if I was in a hospital setting or an agency setting, there would have been lots of folks around to help me navigate that. But I was by myself. It was up to me. I had to handle that. And I've had, a fair number of those kinds of experiences over the years. Sometimes when you are owning a practice, you are going to have problems with your office. Plumbing problems, electrical problems, storm damage, problems with parking. When I ran a group practice, we had a beautiful 3-story Victorian house that held the practice that was lovely, that clients loved and we loved. But the parking lot had been the backyard of this house, and it was not anywhere near sufficient enough to hold the amount of traffic that was coming and going in that building all day long. I had to constantly work on finding solutions for that. And when, the toilet stopped working or the AC didn't come on the way it was supposed to, or we had straight line winds that knocked down trees all around the building, guess who's the one that has to go deal with all that? Yeah, when you're the CEO, that's yours. And then there are also going to be times over the years, especially if you have a group practice, when you may have to deal with hopefully rare but very real problems that may crop up with one of your providers. I had a provider in my practice at one point who was fairly young, fairly new to the profession, still working on licensure, who posted something online one night about her use of psychedelics. And that was at a time when our practice was in a market that would not necessarily have supported that or understood that. And she did that without checking with me to see how that might have impacted our group as a whole. Let me tell you, that was a big issue. That was an issue that I had to handle carefully. Or there was the time that word got back to me that I'd had a provider who had lost her temper with a client. That kind of stuff is rare, but problems do crop up. And no matter what they are yours. Whether they are energy issues, like just managing how you feel about something, whether they are mindset issues, whether they are strategy issues, whether they are legal, financial issues, whatever it is, that kind of stuff does pop up, right? So it's really easy to think, especially, with all that excitement in the beginning, that going into private practice is all about roses and rainbows. That once you get out from under the thumb of your employer, woo, Lord, it's going to be so much fun because you are going to be calling all the shots. And yeah, you are. But the reality is that when you are the CEO, it's all yours. And that gets 100 times harder if you are working in isolation. I really want to address this point. when you, whether you are tucked away in a solo office by yourself in a public office building somewhere, or whether you're like I was and you've got a 3-story building full of awesome people doing awesome work, there are all kinds of risks. If you don't have the kind of support that you in particular need to have as the one who's calling the shots, as the business owner, as the entrepreneur, as the creative visionary that's behind the whole thing. There's a risk that you will make strategic mistakes that prevent you from reaching the kind of goals that I know you have for your practice. For example, when I started out my group practice, I set up the financial structure in a way that was great for us as a group, but not so great for me personally. And if I had to do over again, or if I had had the support of others who were at my place, had similar roles that what I had, I might not have done it that way. I doubt y'all have heard me talk about all the struggles I had in the beginning about underpricing, right? Undercharging and being really bad about how I sort of managed the money side of my practice. I don't think I would have had those mistakes, those strategic mistakes that impacted my bottom line if I had not been working in isolation. But I was. I didn't know anybody else who ran a practice. I'd never been in a business before. I didn't know anyone who owned a business of any kind. I was totally figuring it out as I go. So there's a real risk that you're going to make some strategic errors that can hurt your overall level of success if you are all by yourself in this. Then there's that risk of burnout, or worse, giving up completely. That can happen when you are working too hard with too little support. Golly, y'all, there are seasons in your life that are going to demand more of you, both inside your role as a practice owner and outside, just in your everyday life. Whether you are at that phase of life where you are having children or adopting children or fostering children or bringing kids into your life and you've got a house full, whether you are at that phase of life where you are dealing with elderly parents, whether you are at that phase of life when you're an empty nester and you're trying to get your young adult kids out on their own, whether we all go through times in our life when we are dealing with illness or disappointments, divorce. Life happens to us just like it does everybody else. So there are seasons that have great joy sometimes, but are still very difficult and draining and take a lot out of you. And seasons that are really hard that do the same. If you are handling stuff all by yourself and you don't have some kind of support system in place, running your practice at the same time that you're dealing with all that, that's no good, my friends. I personally have been experiencing that since last summer in particular, where I've had lots of life challenges that I wouldn't have missed for anything. They have brought all kinds of beautiful moments to my life that I am immensely grateful for. And navigating life while keeping a practice going is a challenge. And I wouldn't want to be facing that without the support of others. One of the things I see most often for folks who are working in isolation is that you are often getting in your own way because you just can't see where you are tripping yourself up, where you might be holding yourself back. We all have countless life experiences, cultural training, historical influences, limiting beliefs that get in the way of what we think we can do or how we approach our practice. And just like our clients who cannot see what's right in front of their nose and they need us to help them see it, we're no different. We're human beings, right? We need people around us who can help us see what we may not always see. So I just want to say that your level of success, your ability to last, to keep this going, to sustain it over time, no matter what's happening, and your very real ability to just flat have some fun as a business owner, which I think is every bit as important as the rest of it, that could be hampered if you are working in isolation, if you're working solo, if you are working operating in a vacuum and you are completely winging it on your own. That's why I am such a huge fan of operating in ways that bring me into contact with other entrepreneurs. And I don't just mean people like me. I don't just mean other clinical social workers who are in private practice. I mean all kinds of folks who run lots of different businesses. I do find it especially helpful to work with or connect with or talk to people who are in something similar, who come from sort of a similar point of view because we have similar challenges. But I love being around people who are ahead of where I am, who are doing things I haven't figured out yet, as well as people that may be a little bit behind where I am because I can help them. We all benefit from that. That goes to that group I mentioned at the beginning of this conversation. Those women are all the people who are in my accomplished group. These women are badasses, y'all. I mean, these folks on their own in their lives have accomplished so much, tackled so much personally or professionally, and often both. And they are the kind of people who don't actually think they ever need anyone. And yet to see how their faces have lit up as they have shared and heard from each other's stories and the sense of connection and recognition. I see you, I get you, and oh my gosh, you get me too. It gives me goosebumps. It is so powerful. Well, I like to bring that to my coaching work as well. And that's why I am launching a summer workshop series that is not going to be me talking at you. It's going to be us, you and me and others coming together to work on things that are going to move your practice forward. The Ideal Practice Summer Workshop Series is starting next week, guys, June the 3rd. We start on June the 3rd. We are going to be meeting 3 times next week. And each time is about an hour and a half, midday. So you can tie this around your lunch hour. Yes, you might have to move a client or two, but that will not hurt you. And the benefit of coming is going to outweigh 1 hour of having to move somebody because you too will have that experience of how cool it is to be in the room, even if it's a room online, with other people who see you, who get you because they have so much in alignment with you. And I so want you to come. I so want you to come. I'll share some more details about what we're going to be doing at the end of this conversation today. So be sure and stick around all the way to the end so you can hear that. But if you already know, I don't know what you're doing, Wendy, but whatever you're into, I'm into. Go to wendypittsreeves.com/summer. wendypittsreeves.com/summer to get your name on the list. Go ahead and register. It is completely free, but I am only sharing this with people who register. So you got to do that so I can get you on the list and I can send you the information. wendypittsreeves.com/summer. Do that. And then clear your calendar, my friends. June the 3rd, that Monday, that Wednesday, that Thursday, 11:30 to 1 Eastern, 8:30 to 10 Pacific. Plan it. Join me. We're going to have fun because that's what happens when you have mutual support. That's what happens. So let's talk about how you can do this on an ongoing way in your own practice, okay? Because I hope I've got your attention. I hope I'm making you think. And if you've been in practice for a while, you already know this because you've already had these kinds of experiences, right? Yeah, I'm sure you have. Well, when you think about connecting with other people, when you think about consciously looking out for this kind of support, I want you to know that there are certain things that you need to be able to talk about for this to be effective for you. I am not talking about just finding a cheerleader, y'all. We do need that. We do need that. We need people around us who can remind us that we are capable on the days that we don't really feel like we are. We need people who can remind us that we've got this on the days that it's harder than others, right? Yes. But there's more than that. For your support team, your support, whether this is one person or a group of people or a variety of folks, you need to be able to be honest with this person or these people about how much money you're making or not. You need to be able to tell them real numbers about when it's not good and when you're worried. You also need to be able to tell them real numbers when it's freaking awesome. The first time you get a $5,000 client or an $8,000 client, this needs to be someone or someone's that you can say that to, and they're going to go, wow, yay for you. Not, who do you think you are? Those are not the right people for you. All right, y'all. You need to be able to talk to these people bluntly and honestly about your workload and how and when to hire somebody and what to do if you have a problem employee or even a contractor. You need to be able to talk with them honestly if you have legal concerns, financial concerns, if there's a risk that you think you might be taking and you've got to figure out what to handle, what to do about it. Anything, all the tricky stuff. Those of you who are in the mental health world or any sort of mainstream medicine, and I'm going to guess also those of you who are in alternative healthcare, you know that as a clinician, as a healthcare provider, you have clinical issues, right? Where you need somebody that you can go talk to. Like something comes up with a client where you're like, I need to run this by somebody and make sure I'm addressing this the right way. We all need that in our lives as professionals. I'm saying you need the exact same level of honesty and competent support as a business owner, as a private practice owner. And there's lots of ways to get this in sort of different levels of intensity, different levels of flexibility, different levels of how personal it can be. All right. But I kind of wanted to set the stage here first to say, this is the kind of stuff you want to be talking to people about because this is the real stuff we deal with as business owners. I could tell you lots of stories if we had time, but I won't. So where do you find these people? Where do you find the kind of folks who can 100% be there for you? Not one-sided, like goes both ways. You can be there for them as well. Well, one of the easiest, like low-cost entry points here is to find an online forum to be a part of. So there are countless, excuse me, I've got an itch. My eyes are itching me today. Probably spring allergies, or maybe somebody's coming to visit. Maybe somebody's coming to visit me. Anyway, one of the easiest points of entry is an online forum. So Facebook and LinkedIn are full of free groups that you can join to talk to other people who are in your industry. And if they are well managed, if they are curated, if they've got people who are monitoring the content, if it's a good group, you should be able to pose certain questions there. You may not be able to be quite as open as I want you to be able to be, but you can go there and pose a question such as, what do you do when a client asks you to cut your fees? How do you handle that? What do you do when you have a client who's missed 3 times in a row? How do you handle that? What do you do when you're thinking about buying an office building? How do you make that decision? Like you can post those kinds of questions in an online forum and hopefully get honest, fair, mutual, loving support. That's a really great way to start. I am a co-admin for a local group in my area in the Knoxville, East Tennessee area that has well over 1,000 members. I think we're up to around 1,400 members right now that are all licensed mental health professionals in our area. And that is totally a place where people can go and ask those kinds of questions. So that's one easy place to start finding this kind of support. And if it's a good one, it should be safe for you to say, having a tough day today, y'all, could use some support. Okay. But let's take it a step up from that. The next thing I would recommend is just finding a colleague who is also in practice like you that you can talk to. Now, if you're managing a group practice, I actually think it's helpful to talk to someone who is outside of your group, someone else who is also responsible like you are. If you're in a solo group, it can be virtually anybody else who's in private practice, a solo group, solo provider. But talk to somebody else who runs a business. So in the early days, I connected with a psychologist that was working at the agency I was working at. We were assigned together to do a group. Yes, there's a theme here today. We were tasked by the agency that we were working with to design and begin implementing a group for adolescent girls. And in the process of designing that group, found out that we had a whole lot in common. And we ended up both going into practice together. And although we were in the same practice together, and I think it would have been helpful if I talked to somebody outside, it was still great because we were both learning together and we were both sort of hashing out the problems together, right? Find someone else, another colleague that you can talk to who is in practice that you can be honest with. And if you want to take it a step up from that, look for an accountability partner. Now, ideally, this is someone who is maybe not at the exact same level you're at, but is near where you are in terms of overall growth and development as a practice owner. If there's a huge disparity between you, if they're at, 6 figures a year and you're still in the, you're making 20,000 a year and they're making 120,000 a year, that may be too big a difference. If you have been in practice for 5 years and they've been in practice for 5 months, that may be too big a difference. I don't really know. It depends on the situation. But ideally, an accountability partner is someone like you who has ambition, who has goals, who wants to get somewhere, and who, like you, is committed to personal growth, to sort of facing their inner demons, to expanding in ways that might be a little bit outside of their comfort zone, and who wants someone to both encourage them and challenge them when they need it. And the two of you together can support, encourage, and challenge each other. You all have heard me talk about this. I have an accountability partner that I talk to almost every Monday and have for years now. And even though we have been doing this for so long, we still are talking about business. She's in a completely different line of work than I am. She is a solo entrepreneur in marketing and has a completely different area of focus. But by golly, we are still helping each other, still calling each other out, still supporting each other. And I would love for you to have that. Just be picky about who you choose. It needs to be someone that's a good fit for you and that you're a good fit for them. If you want to go a step up from that, start your own peer group of some sort. Some of you have heard me mention that back in the beginning, when I first started my practice, I was so hungry to get to know people in my community. I was brand new in my town. I didn't know anyone. I didn't have a reputation. Nobody knew who I was. I needed referrals. I just needed to know who was out there, right? I started a networking lunch where once a month I would just invite random people, 5 or 6 people at a time, to join me for a networking lunch. Other therapists, school counselors, nurse practitioners, educational consultants, like all different kinds of folks who had any kind of connection to the work that I was doing. Hey, we're going to be meeting at my favorite Mexican restaurant next Monday. You want to join us? And that in itself became its own kind of a peer support group that over time helped me in countless ways. You could totally do that. The point is, someone has to take the lead. Someone has to have the energy and the drive to organize the thing. And if you don't want to do that, then okay, don't. But there is a risk. Remember the risk of isolation. So the biggest way, or the sort of the higher level way that you can go find the kind of support that I'm talking about, is to join a mastermind, preferably one that's associated with a coach. I have been in masterminds of one kind or another for, goodness gracious, over 10 years at this point, or maybe we're right at 10 years. No, because I'd worked with someone else earlier. Yeah, a little over 10 years at this point. I have been a member of a mastermind one way or another, a good high functioning mastermind with people who are sharp, who are committed, who are serious about success, and who I absolutely love. That group is still like those groups have over time morphed in a way, like, the shape changes sometimes, the participants change, the structure changes, but the core doesn't. And the group that I am involved with now, we meet once a quarter, and we are meeting and we are scattered out all over the country, but we're going to meet in person this summer. We're actually all going to come together and meet up in Washington State. I'm so excited. We've already got our reservations. Cannot wait to be in the same room with these people. We're going to be renting an Airbnb for a few days. And I'm telling you, we will do some work. We will do some serious work. And the kind of work I'm talking about, y'all, is not just strategic. It's not just, how do I market my practice better? How do I structure my packages better? How could I launch a program where I'm going to be helping support parents with kids on the spectrum better? How can I get this off the ground? We do talk about that kind of stuff. We also talk a lot about mindset. We also talk about blind spots that we all have. We also talk about how to handle it when we're feeling discouraged, when we're overwhelmed. It's really good stuff. And that is how I manage not to work in isolation, even now. My personal work circumstances have changed. I did run a group practice for 25 years. I no longer have that practice. I let go of that a few years ago. I am now seeing my counseling folks in a teeny tiny, I keep hitting my microphone, in a teeny tiny little solo office. And I work from home when I'm coaching. So there's a real risk that I never talk to anybody. But I understand that risk, and I'm not going to let that happen. So not only do I have my mastermind, but I also am part of a large coaching group with a coach, and I am also contracting to do some individual work with a different kind of coach. So I understand how important this is, and I walk my talk, and I hope you will do that as well. I hope I'm giving you, I hope you're getting the point that, like, life is just so much easier if you don't try to handle this by yourself. And you have the capacity to find the kind of support you need, even on your own. So here's a little homework exercise I'm going to suggest for you. If you do nothing else, just identify 3 people that you can turn to when you need to make a decision, when you need to solve a problem, when you are considering personal expansion in some way in your practice or as a practice owner. See if you can think of 3 people that you can turn to who would be supportive, encouraging, not naysayers, but who also would be a voice of reason and who could help you think it through, who wouldn't tell you what to do, yes or no, but would help you think it through. See if you can come up with 3 people. And you may think that you don't need this. You may think that other people wouldn't want this, that other people, that would be a burden on them, but it won't be, because you will do the same for them. I actually think you'll find that people love this and are so glad you asked. And if you want more of that, come to the Ideal Practice Summer Workshop Series, because this series is going to be highly interactive. We're going to be doing some work live together, online, but live. All right. And by the time you finish, you might just realize that you have found your tribe. That's what I want for you. I want you to find your tribe. All right, my friends, that's what I've got for you today. Be sure to stick around for just a moment more while I give you the details about that series. And have a great week. And I will see you next time right here on Ideal Practice. Bye now. Hey guys, have you heard the news? Have you heard about this brand new opportunity that I'm bringing your way soon? Now, you know that my entire purpose on the planet is to help you design and build your very own ideal practice, right? So I've been working on something really special for you. Are you ready? On Monday, June the 3rd, the Ideal Practice Summer Workshop Series is going live. This is a series of 3 live interactive workshops that I have designed to help you break through the overwhelm and finally create the profitable, sustainable, and enjoyable private practice that I know you've wanted all along. And here's the coolest part. The whole thing is 100% free. Starting on June the 3rd, we're going to hang out together on Zoom. And guys, we are going to be working together and covering 3 key areas that I know you struggle with and where I know you need help. So on June the 3rd, we're going to talk about what it even means to be profit-centered, people-forward. We're going to talk about claiming your worth, owning your authority, and you're going to walk away with a whole new level of clarity about what it looks like to have a healthy payment and pricing structure in place. And then on Wednesday, June the 5th, we're going to talk about effective marketing, and I'm going to share 5 key elements that will power up your messaging and connect you with your best clients. You're going to love that. And finally, on Thursday, June the 6th, we're going to talk about how to avoid some of the more common pitfalls and problems that come with being the CEO. Because, folks, we all know that being your own boss requires a completely different way of thinking about things, even if you're a one-person show. I'm going to help you with that. And at the end of our 3 days together, you will walk away with actionable strategies that you can put in place literally right away. I know you started your business for a reason, and I want to help you get back in touch with that vision. Now, as I've said, this whole series is 100% free, but I do need to know that you're coming so I can send you the link, because this is not going to be public, y'all. So to get your name on the list, all you have to do is go to wendypittsreeves.com/summer. wendypittsreeves.com/summer. Enter your contact info there, and I will send you all the details so that you can come along and take advantage of what is really an awesome opportunity, y'all. So mark your calendars. We start on Monday, June the 3rd at 11:30 Eastern, 8:30 Pacific, and we'll work together for about 90 minutes. Go get your name on that list. I cannot wait to see you there.